Hey, everybody. Welcome to an all new edition of House Calls Podcast. Tonight's episode is another one that the guys in the analytics group, people in the back office, called another 5 for 1. Ty talks 5 times more than I do. And once again, the only way I get my opinion out there, or even my face out there, is I have to take my shirt off and do something to get us clicks, get us likes, get us subscriptions. So please do that. Right now, I'm sitting in 48-degree cold plunge. I finished my sprints. I finished my cool down and my stretching. And now I'm taking a nice ice plunge to take care of any inflammation and cool down the body because it's about 90 degrees out with 130% humidity. I needed to do this to relax because I didn't get to say anything with our great interview with our guest today, Dr. Margaret Turner. Margaret is a pediatrician, but she talks a lot about the influence of social media, how kids are being led astray by listening to people that aren't exactly experts in their field and are just doing things because they see them done on TikTok. Things we all know, but it's always nice to hear it from a professional. I'm sure Dr. Know-It-All, I'm talking about Ty, not Dr. Turner, will tell you more about ice plunging and things in the future. But for right now, sit back, enjoy this great conversation with Dr. Turner, and hopefully you'll see me in a future episode. Thanks very much.
Hey everybody, so welcome to House Calls the podcast with my co-host Matt Waldron, and today we are interviewing Margaret Turner, the pediatrician to the stars, or at least 4 superstars that I'm aware of that you're the pediatrician to. So welcome on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you, and let's get right to it. Was it weird that Roddy wet his bed until he was 12?
And that's what we're talking about with the editing. That will be edited out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not because Roddy can't handle it, but Roddy just found out that Matt only weighs like 150 pounds. And he was like, how does he just not get tossed around when he offends people with his jokes?
Because I do it from behind the screen far, far away.
It always works better.
But seriously, we want to find out, how did you get interested in medicine?
So this is, sort of one of those stories that people can't believe is real. But when I was 10 years old, I went to a career day at my elementary school. And I think it was like right after I wanted to be like a lunch lady. There was a nurse who came and spoke. And I went home and I was like, I think I want to be a nurse. Like that was pretty impressive. I think I want to be a nurse. And my dad, I remember him distinctly saying to me, nurse is great, but like you could be a doctor. Like, why not be the person giving the orders instead of the one taking the orders? And I was like, oh yeah, that definitely sounds much better.
Wow.
And that was it. After that, I decided I wanted to be a pediatrician. At 10, I said I want to take care of kids, which is bizarre that I would know that. And in fact, when I was interviewing for med school, I went to Wellesley, so I was all like girl power all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to an interview and a man said to me, you're a woman, of course you'll do peds. And I was like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll be a surgeon. Like, you can't tell me what to do. And so for my first 2 years of med school, I thought I was going to be a surgeon.
In spite of the negative feedback. Good for you.
When
It's so funny. And Ty and I will cut each other off all night, so don't worry about that. But it's interesting. We've had Dr. Steve Brown on as well, and he was roughly the exact same age as 10 when he realized he wanted to become a doctor. And so lucky for you too.
I took a class when I was at Wellesley called Vocation, and it talked about certain professions, people feeling called to do that work. And it was like military and medicine and religion, like people who were priests. And I always thought that was so fascinating to feel like that you could somehow feel like you were destined to do this.
Very cool.
With the kid part, were you somebody who was taking care of younger siblings or younger cousins or always babysitting? Or okay.
I have 3 younger brothers, and they might debate how good of a babysitter I was. I think I rolled with a pretty iron fist. I liked being in charge even then. And then I did babysit all the way through, even in college. That was like my main job was babysitting. So
okay. And then where'd you go to med school?
I went to Hahnemann, that is now defunct and now is, I guess Drexel. It's called Drexel. But it was, my year was the second to last graduating class from Hahnemann before it joined Medical College of Pennsylvania. So like there were 2 schools that merged and then all got bought by Drexel.
Got it.
So,
and then how did you ultimately end up at University of Maryland? for residency?
Well, I met my husband at a wedding. My best friend from med school got married to his best friend from elementary school, and he was in the wedding. And in fact, you know Dave very well. And his running joke is that he looked so good in a tux, I couldn't resist him.
So
the
he
rest
is
is
the
history.
world's biggest sports fan. So what was his pickup line? Was it like about how Len
So
Bias was better than Michael Jordan? What was it?
no, so you will love this. Because in fact, the whole like Friday night and part of Saturday, we didn't even know each other existed, but we played this like football game on the beach. So the guy who was getting married, his dad had been a quarterback at Penn State. And so I played, and having three brothers, and the dad, who was a quarterback at Penn State, rifled a pass down the beach, and I caught it. And actually, at our wedding, Mark gave this toast, and he said there were two thuds. There was the thud of the ball hitting Margaret's chest, and there was the thud of Dave's jaw hitting the ground.
Oh, that is awesome.
That's even better.
So
Ty's so jealous right now.
Yes.
What year from Penn State did he play? Oh my God.
Yeah. We've had a lot of Penn State connections on this podcast. Yes. So what I want to get into is what has changed the most in your 20 plus years, right, at Annapolis Pediatrics?
Yeah, I'm 24 years at Annapeds.
Yeah, like what does anything stick out in your mind that you're like,
Yes.
I used to see this all the time 20 years ago, or this is how kids were 20 years ago?
What I see that I say every single day is how much harder it is to be a new mom today, how much harder it is to raise kids than when we were raising kids. The internet, the TikTok, influencer, everybody's an expert, but nobody has any actual formal training, has made our job so much harder. But it has made the job of being a parent incredibly more difficult, because everywhere you go, everyone is telling you you're doing everything wrong. Every decision you make, every choice you make, everything that you think feels right for your kid, you are being told by Susie down the street with the TikTok channel that it's wrong and that you're making the wrong choice. And your kid will never grow up to be a functioning human being because you've made every choice wrong. So our biggest job every day is to remind people, you're doing a great job. Doesn't matter what you feed them. It doesn't matter where they sleep. It's like you're doing a great job raising your kid, and trust your own instincts that you know your kid better than anyone. But all day, every day, we are fighting against internet influence for the simplest of things. I mean, you think about vaccines, that like now people don't think they should get vaccines. The latest one this week is people don't want rectal temps for babies because somebody on the internet said that rectal temps are damaging. Like, this is the only way to get an accurate temperature in a baby. So people are refusing basic care, basic things because someone on the internet told them to.
And it's like whatever goes viral this week, and that's the battle you're facing.
So what is fascinating is we'll see these trends come through the office. There was a week where every baby was coming in like a cute little robe. So like you'd come in and, you know, babies usually naked on the table, and they'd be in some cute little giraffe robe or an elephant robe. And at one point I said to one of the nurses, like, oh my God, I've seen so many babies in robes this week. And they're like, oh, it's all over TikTok. It's a whole TikTok thing. Go to the pediatrician and wear a robe.
Wow. Wow. So how do you fight that? Or is it you can't fight it and you just do the best you can and make sure these moms and dads have the confidence?
I'm actually head of our marketing division, and we spend an enormous amount of time trying to figure out where are our parents, what are they hearing? So we actually got on TikTok because that's where people are. So we have to be on TikTok because that's where the moms are. We do this thing now called Is This a Thing? And it's basically like a myth buster, and it's you know, the providers can pick and choose what topics. You know, we did one on green snot doesn't mean you need an antibiotic. And that, you know, it seems so basic, but that's what people come in, and the daycare has sent the kid home and said, you need to get an antibiotic. So we try to be the loudest voice in the room. We try to attack whatever we're hearing. We're starting a thing called Fact Friday that is legitimately just like, here's what is actually real about measles vaccine. Vitamin A is not a treatment for measles. Please get vaccinated. So as much as we can, we try to be in this space and know what people are exposed to so we can counteract incorrect information.
Wow. I have three daughters, and our first one, who is about to be 21, she was a newborn. And I'll never forget this weekend. So my wife has, first-time mom, list of questions. And I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I cannot believe you're going to ask these questions. She's in between me and the doctor, and she goes through all of her lists, and he's like, yes, no, yes, no. And she goes, okay, now here's my last one. And I knew what it was. And I just kind of went to like, gave the guy hands like, hey, I did not ask this. And she goes, how cold is it too cold to take a baby outside? And he goes, you know, they do have babies in Alaska. And he was like, oh, okay. So we X that one off the list.
Oftentimes we know the most common questions. So very often in a newborn visit or 1 month visit, I'll sort of attack head on the things I know they're going to ask or that I know
Right.
they've seen. And sometimes they're like, you answered all of our questions ahead of time. And I was like, it's almost like I do this for a living.
That is beneficial about the social media aspect? Like are kids maybe eating healthier or getting more exercise because it's out there, or you're not, is it more
I
like they're
think
putting pressure on people and it's too
actually one
stressful?
of the things where I think kids are getting some good information is on some of the neurodivergent, like kids with ADD
Uh-huh.
are finding more of a like, oh, hey, maybe I'm not weird, or maybe this isn't bad, or maybe meds are not a bad choice. Like they're actually seeing people like them on the internet. And
Uh-huh.
I do think that is reaffirming for people. I think some of the body positivity movement has been somewhat helpful. But yet at the same time, there's always the dark underbelly. So, like, for every kid who's positively affected by something, there's 4 that are negatively. And I am actually not a person who's like, kids shouldn't have social media. I actually think there's a lot of positive engagement that happens on social. And I think we've become a little bit, like, oh, rock music is no good and you kids shouldn't watch TV. And like every generation has something that they're convinced is the downfall of kids today. And I think kids navigate social media way more effectively than we think they do. And I actually think they're much savvier than we give them credit for.
So what do you mean by
Yeah.
navigating it more
I think
successfully?
they are better able to navigate like cyberbullying. Like they don't not as prey to some of the things that we as parents so worry about, even like predators. Like, kids, 15-year-olds who play Roblox can be like, yeah, we know when somebody's a grown up. Like it's not hard to figure out who's a 54-year-old man. I think they're better at sussing out the things that we think are so the boogeyman and so scary. What I don't think they're good at, what I think even adults are very prone to, is trending. This is
Yep.
trending. I'm going to give this a try. I think especially like boys and exercise, there's this whole like culture of creatine and workouts and what workouts work, and I have to get swole and I'm trying to get big. And I think there's just as much influence for boys in appearance as there is for girls. So I worry a lot about, oh, this supplement, I saw this thing about this supplement, or this diet fad trade, like bulk and cutting is one I hear about a lot that I just don't think is real. I don't think bulk and cutting is, you can't add fat and then turn it into muscle. Like that's not science.
It's funny. We did a trial. Matt was one of them. 13 guys last year on the carnivore diet, and we were doing it for middle-aged people. We said clearly at the beginning, this is not for your teenager. It's not for athletes who are
Right.
in high school. We were doing it to be like, does it help with arthritis pain? And it did, but the final conclusion was I'd rather get my knee replaced than have to just eat meat the rest of my life. But you do worry that like maybe they only heard the first part, because people will see me like eating ice cream being like, is that venison ice cream? And I'm like, no, I did it for a month. I did it for 30 days to see if it was possible to be like, if I had a severe autoimmune disease and I was hypersensitive to everything, could I do it? And I was like, yeah, if I was doing it for chronic pain, I could. Am I doing it for the little bit of arthritis in my right knee? No, I'm not doing it. And so I see how the message can kind of, it's really bad with young people if they only get part of the message.
Yes. And I think they tend to cherry pick the part that they're looking for, and they don't hear they don't hear where maybe this isn't for everyone, or this isn't, creatine's a great example. We see like every teenage boy now, if they're exercising, if they're working out, they're using creatine. And I think there's some who probably are using it okay with enough hydration, but a lot of people are like, oh, if 5 milligrams is okay, I'm going to do 15 because I'm really trying to get big before lacrosse season. So there's always that tendency for teenagers to, if less is okay, more is probably better. And so they don't really regulate anything well.
Yeah. Do you guys have did your practice recommend almost like a curriculum? Like these sites are good if you want to learn about different things, or not to that point?
We tend to try to stay out of that, just because even when we were posting, our marketing manager goes through and really scrubs a site and makes sure that like, just because this one was funny or this one we liked doesn't mean that all of their stuff is going to be. So that means there's very few sites that you could legitimately really recommend. We try to stay with like the American Academy of Pediatrics and It used to be the ACIP, the American College of Immunization Practices, was like the governing body for all vaccines. That's where we would send people, or we would post like, hey, this is from the AAP. This is a trusted site. You might really love one post, and then there's something else where you're like, whoa, you're like way off on the deep end on that one. And that's not something we would recommend.
You mentioned the newborns with the preteens and teens. Like what are the biggest issues they're having or their parents are having?
I know you guys are big on sports, and so sports is one of my big things for preteens and teens, where I spend an enormous amount of talking about like how often our kids now, the club sports scene has exploded in this way that I think is terrible for young kids. So what used to be okay for, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and it was sort of like a natural progression of the kids who want to really go on and play more seriously and play higher competition. But now it's morphed into like, if you're 7 and you live in Annapolis, there is no rec ball for you to play. So either you play club or you don't play. Mm-hmm. And that is for every sport. So now kids are playing 3 year-round sports starting at the age of 7, and bones and joints are not designed for this. And bones and joints are not designed for 3 seasons on turf on multiple sports. And so this rise of ACL injuries. So I spent a lot of time talking to middle schoolers about how to prevent an ACL injury, because you're playing soccer and lacrosse year round all the time. And you're going from 2 hours of lacrosse practice to 2 hours of soccer practice in 95-degree heat on turf. And everyone thinks that this is just okay and this is the way it should be. So it's almost trying to cobble back like, hey, like this is actually not good for your kid's body. It's not good for their, this idea that like, oh, my 8-year-old loves playing in 20-degree weather. It's March and it's raining and it's 20, but they just love lacrosse so much. And you're like, who is it so much? Yeah. Like, is it really them, or is it you and you love being a lacrosse mom and that's part of your identity? Yeah. So trying to separate for parents, what does the kid really love, and what do they know that they love, and what do they really want to be doing versus what are you getting suckered into because there's no other way to play and you want your kid to play. So then before you know it, you're playing club ball at 7 because there's nowhere else to play.
Any listener knows that message is coming from Margaret, who was very enthusiastic about her kids' sports careers. It really enjoyed sports. It's just putting it in perspective.
We're not music people.
I love sports, but there are times where I'm like, that's a lot of club sports when you might not even play that sport in high school, and I do think that model where around the 7th or 8th grade, you start kind of figuring out who's going to high school, and maybe you increase the amount those people are playing and you have club and stuff like that. It seems reasonable to me. It seems crazy to play a few summers of club, especially in the Annapolis area where there's so much to do in the summer with your family. Yes. You're away from your family. You're away from a lot of your friends. If some of your friends aren't on the team, for a sport that you might be done by the 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I'm all for keeping kids active as much as possible. Yes. And I'm not saying I don't want them outside running around. I just don't know if they need to be in Delaware playing 3 games.
Yes. And their 3 games are spread out over an entire day, and they're mostly sitting around eating, Uncrustables and Cheez-Its and like hanging out under the tent while they're waiting for their second
on their phones.
Game. Yes.
Yeah.
So, this idea too that like, oh, exercise is like, oh, they play soccer, so they're exercising. The average 7-year-old is playing for 20 minutes out of an hour-long game, and maybe they're running part of that time, but if the ball's on one side or the other, they may just be standing there. And then they have team snacks. So I've been anti-team snacks since my kids were young. And in fact, my kids were super embarrassed because I would always be like, no team snack, like if I have anything to do with it, because kids are playing, again, they play for an hour. The game is an hour. They're playing for maybe 20 minutes. And then the team mom brings out 2 Gatorades and a bag of Fritos, and the kids just powered down 1,000 calories when they ate breakfast at home. They went and played their 20 minutes, and then they go home for lunch. And now they're going to have 1,000-calorie snack because they played so hard. And so they need their Gatorade. Like, the messaging for all of this is so not where we really need to be. So I get all
carries to adulthood where you're like, oh, I'm going to get in shape, so I'm going to go for a run in the morning before work. Oh, I ran. Now I can get the big muffin at Starbucks.
Yes. So we've lost some of that perspective of sort of like balance and moderation, and that, you can do kind of anything if you do it in moderation. You can have the ice cream. It doesn't have to be venison ice cream if you're going to have it once in a while. But every night because you went on a run, probably not a great plan.
Back to the club sports. You talked about some parents make their identity be lacrosse mom, lacrosse dad. Where's that drive for people?
Or wrestling dad.
Or wrestling dad. Is it more from the kids or the parents, do you think, that you see that the kids want to be part of this?
I see an enormous amount of parent-driven.
Right.
Because again, when you're 7 and somebody says, "Do you want to play lacrosse?" Sure.
Right.
And then how they can't differentiate between club lacrosse, where you're going to do this like a job, versus I just want to go once in a while and play with my friends. The kid has no idea. And
Right.
so more often than not, the parent claims they're doing it because the kid said they wanted to, but the kid doesn't actually understand what they're signing up for.
Right.
And quite frankly, a lot of parents don't understand what they're signing up for. The number of times we've been asked to sort of write a letter excusing somebody from a club thing that they didn't realize that they had to be there, as that it wasn't sort of optional to go to practice. And they're like, "Hey, this kid actually plays the trombone and needs to go to trombone practice too. And this club wants us to be there 7 days a week. And, we signed this contract, but we didn't know what we were signing. And now she's got all this knee pain. And can you write us a letter and get us our money back?" And
these parents don't realize then a kid is the all-star of one tournament in Delaware. They don't realize there's 7,000 other tournaments going on up and down the East Coast and throughout the country.
Yes.
That's great. Good for you. You're the all-star.
Do you think it's turning the corner a little bit? Do you think it's turning the corner at all, where maybe they're starting to realize that the idea is to get people to love the game for the lifelong love of the game and kind of calm down a little bit? Or do you think it hasn't?
I think it's still ramping up. I think we haven't hit rock bottom yet. Okay. And I have joked often with parents of until the group of 7-year-old parents band together and say, "We're not going to do this," it can't change.
Right.
Because there's nowhere else for these kids to play. And you don't want your kids to not be able to play. And it's a little bit of no one plays in the neighborhood anymore because everyone's at practice. Everyone would just say, "You know what? We're taking a break." In fact, my favorite part of COVID, of the whole thing, was there was no team sports. Nobody could play. And families went on hikes and they went on bike rides. And
family
Sundays
dinners
became family days to go out and do things.
Yeah.
And it was if only this could stay, if we could. And everyone's like, "This is so great. We love this." And as soon as everything opened back up, where do we go? We go right back to Delaware.
I think the way that it changes, honestly, because I've thought about this a lot, I think the way it changes is when you play those 3 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, you're repeating the same mistakes you already made. So if you're on a team that spends more time on skills, less total practice time, less total game time, but actually skill development and agility development and strength development with less hours, and that team wins and can prove that they did it on a lacrosse season into the summer schedule, but then maybe they still were able to play basketball, still able to play soccer. That's how it's going to change, because when that team wins the tournament, everybody's going to be like, "What? They only practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays and they do this agility thing on, that kind of thing."
Yeah.
Because you can repeat the same mistake a million times.
Yeah, you've been preaching that since we stood on sidelines together. That teams don't practice enough and they spend too much time in games, and then they're not actually learning any new skills. Which and when Cole was recruiting, every single coach, we would say, "What appeals to you about Cole's game?" They're like, "Well, he's 6'4" and he's a 3-sport athlete. He's been a 3-sport athlete all through high school, and I don't think enough kids do that anymore. I don't think kids are allowed to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Most high schools, it's just not possible. There's too many kids playing, and you can't be the best at all of them. But is there a place to reinvest in rec, where kids can play at a rec level that's just for fun? I just show up and I have fun, and we show up and play pickup, and there's coaches there to sort of make sure we're not killing each other. I feel like some sort of reinvestment in a rec model you get a lot of people who'd prefer to do that, and kids who would prefer to do that. But I don't know how to start that. I don't know where that starts, or how you pull off people back. It seems like the only
sport that is kind of based like that is football. Like football, you kind of do tend to play just football season. Some people who are super maybe want to get recruited or playing 7-on-7s and things like that. But it's still a sport that you can kind of in a way show up at high school. I mean, you might not be the quarterback if you just show up in high school, but you can get on the field probably.
Yes.
And then there's some of these outlier sports. Like I went to a rugby match at Spalding High School, and it was mostly kids started playing in high school. It was super cool. Yes. And,
Yeah.
they were having a great time. There were tons of fans there. It was a big deal.
Lots of kids that never wrestled until high school and got
Yeah.
to, they're football, lacrosse kids, and they want to do something in the winter. And so they pick up wrestling, and
Yeah.
natural athletes can pick up a sport anytime.
Yeah.
So, Margaret, let's just have you and I talk, okay? And I'll tell you all about Ty's croquet career, because he only played that for a couple months a year, but he'd come out there in his whites. He had the Panama hat with the bug net on it. And
Matt and I have both talked about this, and we've asked guests about it, and we haven't gotten a great answer. How do we get the kid who is not interested in sports to be active and interested in fitness?
So I will tell you, one of the other things we see a lot, especially by middle school, is the kid that recognizes, like, I'm not going to play lacrosse in high school. I'm really not that good. I don't really enjoy it. I have a lot of kids who don't like team sports, who don't like ball team sports. No one passes to me. This isn't fun for me. And so the rise of more individual sports, things like cross country and track and tennis and golf, that's now moving down into the middle school age. My middle son, he ran cross country his first 2 years. And that was great for him. And he now is actually a kid who will run at 24. He'll go for a run. He runs on purpose.
Right.
Whereas like I run if I'm being chased. Like I was a athlete who, like, I only ran if I needed to for season. And so I loved cross country as an opportunity of, like, you're just working for a PR. You're not trying to beat anybody. I think there's things like tennis and golf are lifetime sports. Families can play golf and tennis together. Pickleball's getting to be the big new thing. So many kids are getting into pickleball. I think if you can introduce those at even younger ages, kids will fall in love with a sport where they don't have to be the best kid on the team and the kid that everyone passes to. And they're much more likely to then stick with those sports long term.
Right. I also think teaching kids that walking is exercise. Like the 2 miles you walk is better than the 3 miles you don't run. And for a kid, they need to get out of the house. A lot of kids like music, so they can listen to their music, or they can listen to their books on tape, or they can listen to a podcast, and just building that habit of saying, this is exercise, but exercise is like brushing your teeth. You got to do it.
And I start all the time with kids. The AAP recommends an hour a day, 5 days a week. Doesn't have to be continuous exercise, but an hour a day of moving your body. I talk to kids all the time about, so you're right now doing nothing. You have no exercise. You have to start small. Micro goals is the only way to build a habit. So start with 5 minutes. Everybody's got 5 minutes. You can go walk around the neighborhood for 5 minutes and come back inside. And then you'll do 10 minutes and then you'll do 15. And so that concept of starting small and building on it until it is an hour a day and you've made that hour a day. So you will find a way to build it into your day when it's important to you. And then the second concept is that they call it bundling rewards. What do you like to do? You want to watch TV? Great. Get on the treadmill and watch TV while you're on the treadmill and do the two of them together. Now you're much more likely to stick with it. If you think walking is boring, listen to a podcast, listen to music, do something that you want to do.
Same model for nutrition. How do you get that to kids? Because they're fighting against what their parents are feeding them.
There's a book by this guy named Michael Pollan called Food Rules. And every page is a single rule. And it's things like eat food that rots. Food that rots is real food that comes from the ground. And Doritos don't rot. If you drop a bag of Doritos behind your couch, 6 months later, it's going to still look like that. One of his rules is eat food that a third grader can pronounce. If it has ingredients that a third grader can't pronounce, it means it's chemicals and it's not food. So if you can get people to learn some of these rules and think about this when you go to the supermarket, you have a fighting chance at least buying good food and trying to prepare good food. When I first read that book and started clearing out my cabinets, I would go to Whole Foods and spend $5 on a bag of chips, and I'd bring it home, and the kids be like, "This tastes like dirt. We're not eating it." So trying to find, like, kids are going to want chips, so find the kettle of 40% less fat chips that are salt, potatoes, and oil, and that's all that's in them. So at least they're clean chips if you're going to eat chips, and have a small portion of them. And I always quote this study. There was a study years ago that talked about portion size, and I think portion size is an even bigger issue in this country than anything else because our portions are 3 times the size of normal. But they did an experiment. They had 2 hotels next door to each other. And in the lobby of the hotels, they put 2 different sets of M&Ms. The first one was a Dixie cup that just had a few M&Ms in the bottle. And they lined them all up. And you walked in and you took a little cup and you went up to your room with your M&Ms. The other one was a quarter cup scoop and a bowl. And so the what you thought was the serving size was the scoop, and you put it in the bowl, and then you walked off. And now you've had 7 times more M&Ms than the little cup. So if we can make that for our kids, if you give them portion sizes that are more true to size, you can train them to think that that's a portion size. And then the supersized fries is too big. When you teach kids that food is designed to be addicting, that McDonald's French fries are designed to addict you, just like heroin is designed to addict you, that these are drugs no different than heroin is. Sometimes you can get kids to buy into like, oh, these scientists are trying to trick me into eating these. And the combination of sugar, fat, and salt is studied by nutritional scientists to become addicting. So you will eat more Pringles. So as much as you can, like, kids are really educatable. And so you can tell a middle schooler, like, you understand the food scientists are trying to get over on you, right? Like, you don't want to be addicted to this stuff. You can sometimes get them to buy in with that.
Has that changed from 20 years ago? Do you feel like now people are more open to it, or asking, or being like,
So
hey, is
much
what I'm
more open
eating
to
have
it.
anything to do with my skin or my sinuses or why I'm getting the flu all the time?
Sometimes, again, to the extreme, because teenagers tend to take things to extremes, but they're much more cognizant of, like, what does a healthy breakfast look like? They're much more likely to be eating avocado toast with an egg than they are to be having Fruit Loops. Most kids, especially athletes, when you talk to them about gas, that food is gas, and the better gas, if you put premium gas in your body, your muscles are going to move better than if you put garbage in, garbage out. They're savvy enough to get that that's real and that matters.
Yeah. It does go back to the TikTok social media thing. Is that one of the things that
Yes.
I really want to work against, is when people think they're doing something healthy and they're doing something unhealthy. And you're like, it's such a bummer because they're putting in the effort and they're doing the exact wrong thing. And that's where it's like the social media thing. Some star says, oh, this works for me.
Yep.
And, that star has their genetics, their metabolism is incredible. And you're like, oh, it's not going to work for everybody. Or
their
for
personal trainer, their
the chef.
Their chef.
So what is your favorite age group to take care of?
Oh, that's so tough, because I love different things about every age. So, like, I love babies. I love helping parents, like, learn to trust themselves and being a parent. But, like, I love teenagers. I love when they're formed and they're forming, and, like, you get to be a part of, like, their life choices and what they want to do. And sometimes you actually can make, like, meaningful change in risk-taking behaviors. But then, like, a 3-year-old who, like, throws their arms around you and hugs you and, like, I love you. Like, there's not an age group that isn't fun. The middle schoolers are probably the most snarky, and learning how to, like, combat that a little bit of, like, don't talk to your mother like that. Like, that's not appropriate way to talk to your mother. Like, she is doing everything she can for you. Please stop yelling at your mother in the middle of this exam room. So probably middle schoolers are the hardest ones to love, but I love something different about every age. And having been here long enough that I have second generation patients, that I have all these, like, people that were my kids that I took care of that now have kids of their own, and that's sweet.
What's your favorite age to take care of? Is it probably 55?
Oh, that's a trick one. I like taking care of high school athletes. Like, I love taking care of high school, college athletes, but I like all age groups. I like everybody who is enthusiastic about trying to get healthier, but I like all my patients. But yes, those are my VIPs.
Yeah. So one of the things that sometimes I will send a kid to ortho, because I don't want to have to be the one to tell them, like, you really need 6 weeks off. Like, I think you have a stress fracture in your tibia, and, like, you need 6 weeks off. I find and again, oftentimes the kid isn't fighting as much as the parent, who's like, well, they said he has to wear a cast, but we're going to take it off after 3 weeks because, he's really got to get back out there. And there's no sense of deferred gratification. Everything is like, now he's 12, he's got to be on the tournament. The coaches are looking at him, he's got to play. And you're like, your son has a pretty big injury. He really should take 6 weeks off and not play this season.
Yeah.
Do you find that frustrating?
I feel like when they're hearing it from the orthopedic surgeon, they tend to get it to be like, you're not cleared, and you can also take a little bit of time to explain to them that it's 8th grade lacrosse, and you put it in reference to the college athletes and the high school athletes. Like, you don't want to miss your junior year of high school because of something you did in the 8th grade. One of my major concerns that I've noticed recently is that people are looking at the true elite athletes, the true professional athletes, and realizing when Adrian Peterson tore his ACL and then had 2,000 yards the next year, not every person is Adrian Peterson. He was psycho with his rehab. That's all he cared about. He's getting millions of dollars to do it. The thing is that everybody has a different time scale, and your kid cannot follow the time scale that Adrian Peterson did. They might be a 2-year recovery, that kind of thing. So I think you're right about holding it in perspective.
I feel like there's all kinds of kids with, Tommy John surgery at 15 for baseball. Like, these are nagging long-term injuries that they never take a break. They never rehab anything. And then they end up with these catastrophic outcomes. But it's so hard. I find that's one of the harder things with the teenage athletes is telling them they have to take a break. They have to stop.
Right.
You're like, I'm talking about 6 weeks. Like, it's not forever. Concussions are the same thing. The kids that try to rush back from concussions.
Yeah, that's probably the most important one.
So Margaret, in your perfect world, we got rec leagues. We have limited social media, only done by people that can be verified.
There you go.
I got you. I'm down. I'm down with all of it. And portion control.
And then homemade food. Homemade food. Not that
if it
much.
rots, okay. If it rots, you can eat it. All right. I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Seems simple, right? Like, why is it so hard? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Very much so.
When you break it down, it is very simple.
You wonder about the rise of ACL tears, and is it because they're playing such higher level at such a younger age? I tore my ACL in '88, and they didn't even repair them in those days. It was like only if you're a professional football player would anyone repair my knee. So, it effectively ended my high school career. It ended any thoughts of playing anything in college. And I ended up rowing in college. I walked onto the rowing team, so I got to keep active. But my knee was destroyed, and at some point I'm going to need a knee replacement. But not getting the quads so much stronger than the hamstrings, not being so core weak and core flexor and the hip flexor weak. How much of that is contributing to this? They're so quad strong, but nothing else has been developed because no one actually knows what they're doing. These coaches that, you're paying $3,000 a season for are mostly just somebody's dad. Like, they're not trained as professional coaches. And so then you're putting your kid 9 months out of the year with people who don't actually know how to develop them in a way that's going to prevent injury.
And that's where the physical therapists and the strength coaches will say that that's the one extra where you're like, it's not too much. Doing the ACL prevention program, especially for women, and doing the strength training for their legs, especially for women, for everybody, can help prevent ACLs. And those studies exist. They prove they work. And if you are playing that high level, that's the one thing that's not extra. Like, put the extra time into your ACL prevention program, not that extra tournament that you're tacking on at the summer where you need rest. What's the special challenge with just getting kids to listen? Because I think back to my dad.
What?
My dad used to always
Wait, what did you say?
Getting kids to listen.
Sorry.
My dad used to always say, I can send him the book. I can send him to school. I can buy him the books, and all he's going to do is eat the covers. And I realized that's what he said whenever I wasn't listening to him. And I thought back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasn't listening ever as a teenager. So you're seeing these people, you're trying to teach them to be healthy, you're trying to comply. And I know treating adults, it's hard enough to get people to comply to the treatment plan. How do you get a kid to comply?
I find using outside sources, who's essentially an unbiased observer, I think they're more likely to listen to me. And I think for kids, they smell bull. So often just being real and being honest and acknowledging what they're doing and where they're at and what life they're actually living. If you can get down on their level, they're much more likely to listen to you. That you're not just some old person who doesn't know anything and doesn't know what social media is. Like, kids are so much more likely, if you are where they are, they're more likely to listen to you.
Yeah, you get one shot. You get one shot with
you
them.
really do. You really do. And I'm very anti-creatine. I spend a lot of time in my practice, because creatine is the gateway to pre-workout, and pre-workout is the gateway to all the Celsius and all the SARMs and like all these other things that are out there, that these performance enhancing that people are doing. And again, these kids, like, if you're 5'6", like you can't make yourself not 5'6". Like, I am sorry, but like maybe you're not a D1 baseball player if you're 5'6", but doing creatine isn't going to be the difference between playing D1 baseball and not. But this is the way kids and parents, honestly, the parents are buying into a lot of this as well. So half the battle with dealing with the kids is not just getting the kid to buy in, but also getting the parent to believe that maybe this is not as healthy as it should be for them. Because I've had parents who are buying pre-workout for their kid, and you're like, you understand they're on an ADD med as well, right? And they're both stimulants, and like, it's a great way to really hurt your heart.
So in an orthopedic standpoint, children are not just little adults. And in orthopedics, that's a huge part. The treatments are so different because of the growth plates and bones remodeling. So creatine, somebody might listen to Huberman Lab and be like, as an adult, where you do not want to lose muscle mass, and there are some neurological things that can help, just because grandpa needs to be on creatine doesn't mean that the 13-year-old
or even dad, right? Like at 50, isn't it well proven like 50-year-old men can maintain muscle mass with creatine, but not at 14 when you have barely started puberty and you don't have any muscles to augment. And it really leads to a lot of dehydration related injuries. I and all of this cooling treatments and all of this. And a huge piece of it, I don't know if you remember, you told me about, I think it was UT Austin. One of the big football programs has a color of urine chart, and like brown is like you're a bad person, and it goes all the way up to clear as pee like a champion. So whenever kids are like, "Oh, how much water do I have to drink?" I'm like, "Pee like a champion, baby. You need clear."
There you go. So before we wrap up, I do want to get a few words on late bloomers. So I mean, like, not just for sports. I mean, like the physical late bloomer who it affects them socially, also the mental late bloomer. Do you ever get that where the kid just needs encouragement to say, hey, you're not developed yet. Don't give up on your hopes and dreams. And I'm actually talking about career things, not even just making the varsity soccer team.
Margaret, just so you know, Ty's asking for himself because he still doesn't. We're hoping this might be the year for puberty for him.
One of the things I see a lot is the kid who, like at 13 or 14, is only just starting puberty and is skinny. So what I tell smaller kids especially is that you have a lot of years of growth yet. You've just started puberty. You got at least 5 more years of getting height. But you can't teach fast. You can't teach fundamentals. The big, tall kids that have never had to fight for position, who've always just been the biggest kid in the team and can like hold their stick up and get a pass from anywhere, those kids have no actual inherent skill. They've relied on being big. So if you're small now, you have to be fast and you have to be like wily and you have to be able to like get around people. So once you grow, you're going to be big and fast, and then nobody's going to be able to stop you. And so a huge piece of it is trying to get them to buy into, like, again, that delayed gratification. Be patient. You are going to get there. So I also like kids to think about adjacent. You don't have to necessarily play the sport. If you love it, there are other ways to be involved in it. Think outside the box, make lemonade out of lemons. But this idea that every kid should know what they're going to major in when they start college, please, no. And the average is most people change careers 5 times during their lifetime. So when someone says to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? You say, why? Are you looking for ideas?
Yeah.
There's lots of really good options out there, but we're so focused on like only 4-year college. And if you're not going to do a 4-year college for a career, you're not where you're supposed to be. You're behind.
Yeah.
So most people don't figure out a career till they're 30. I tell people all the time, your 20s are for trying out new things and figure out what you don't want to be.
Yep.
That's what your 20s are for. Not that you come out of college at 22 and have a career path and know who you're going to be.
And we are both in a job that is relatively academic, and in reality, they definitely weren't all great students in middle school. So if you have a bumper sticker that says my child was an honor roll at whatever middle school, plenty of doctors were not honor students in middle school, and some of them weren't actually outstanding students in high school. Most of them started turning it on in college and had to turn it on in college, but some of them even went back after college to kind of take another shot so they could get into med school. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And
so I do think we could do kids a huge service by not making it seem like like we all had it figured out right away. I think even things like freshman year of college, and I think this is where social media can be both harmful and hurt and maybe helpful, but more harmful. Everybody only posts the best things.
Sure.
And so many kids go to college with this idea that like, oh my God, my parents says like everyone I know says it's the best time of their life and their best friends they made in college, and college was so amazing. But first semester pretty much sucks. And it's hard, and you're away from home, and you're trying to do hard classes, and you have a lot of downtime where you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. So everyone's posting like, I'm at a frat party, I'm at this, I'm going to this game, I'm doing all of these things. But no one's posting the times that they're sitting in the room lonely, feeling miserable, missing home, because no one's talking about that. But they tell me, I hear about it. I hear about how sad everyone is. And this idea that it took you 4 years to get your high school best friends, it's not going to be the first semester of college you're going to have your best friends. And so stop looking for the best time of your life. And remember that, like, there were a lot of days I called home thinking I was never going to get into med school, and I was failing physics, and I took physics for engineers instead of physics for poets. That was the class for pre-med people. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to get into med school. And the pre-med advisor told me there was no way I was going to get in, and I should start thinking about something else. And you got to figure out what you really want and what matters the most to you. But it takes your 20s to do that nowadays.
And it's different for everybody. I would say my first 2 years of college I loved, and then beginning of my junior year I was like, what now? Like, it's kind of like been there, done that. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, I was like, what is going on here?
When did you decide to go to med school?
So my dad was a doctor, so I always thought about it, but I was keeping it in the back of my mind. And basically up through college, I might be a high school teacher or go to med school. I actually applied to both at the same time. I applied to teaching jobs. I was a history major, and I applied to med school. And I had met Ann already, and that played a role in what I decided to do. And I just ended up being like, you know what, I'm going to give the medical thing a try. And I ended up loving it, and I like it. And, I was like, how would I have been as a teacher? I still get to teach now. So it worked out great.
Yes.
But I was not that person who decided right away.
No, it all work out. Like, it doesn't always work out. And so how do you bounce back when it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
That's as important of a life skill as having it work out. Like,
absolutely.
I think, we live in this snowplow parenting land where you smooth out all the obstacles for your kids. They have no idea how to overcome an obstacle. And this idea that everyone is the best, again, you go back to you're the all-star at a tournament, but there's 7,000 tournaments. Everyone's not going to nationals at 9 for field hockey. Like, like everyone thinks like, oh, my kid is so special. And yet, like, kids have a sense sometimes of like, my parents think I'm so great, but.
And you do learn, the saying is, you learn more from your failures than your successes. I mean, that's how you build. And Matt, what was your quote about getting knocked down's part?
When you stumble, make it part of the dance.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's all about learning how to basically learning how to deal with your failures and keep moving forward. You said it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Who was that?
No, I think he's a fictional boxer from Boston, maybe
from Philly.
Topeka.
Huge Rocky Balboa fan.
God, we almost made it the whole way through without a Rocky reference. Almost.
Okay, we're gonna give you the one big final question before your bedtime.
Okay.
Grumpy, Matt.
I get the question.
You're gonna be grumpy and fussy if you don't get your bedtime.
I really need new friends. So what else do you think you could have been if you weren't going to be a doctor? And again, I know it's hard if you were 10.
Thought teaching. I've ended up teaching. I think my dad was in education his whole life, and I think and I love to teach. It is definitely the one thing, and especially as I'm moving into like, the twilight of my career, my last 20 years kind of thing, I feel like that's a place where I really like teaching, imparting wisdom and looking at, again, like the real, So.
You guys both do teach through your practice. You pass on the wisdom and things that you've learned and try to help, as well as the medical piece. So I think you're already doing that. But if you are a teacher and it's the first day of school and they're saying, all right, everybody, we got a brand new teacher coming out for you. She's going to be here. Her name is Margaret Turner. What's your walkout song are they going to play when they introduce you to your first day of school?
So you were going to laugh really hard, but we just did a walk-up video and we had to pick out a song. And I really wanted Boss Bitch would have been my preferred song, but we couldn't put that on our website. So I picked Salt. I am Ava Max, and it's basically a breakup song, but it's basically like put your lipstick on, put your high boots on, and keep going. And I got no more salt. I'm not going to cry over you. I got no more salt.
What is your most inspirational book or movie?
Oh, inspirational. I am. That's very tough. I don't know. I don't know that I don't necessarily take inspiration from one place. I would say my favorite movie is The Kingdom with Justin Bateman and Jamie Foxx and Jennifer Garner.
Oh, this is
Do you know that
awesome because
movie?
I know I've not seen it, so now I have a movie to watch
It's a
Friday night.
pretty, it really looks at um terrorism in the Middle East, and it's like
Right.
this whole, it's like a whole thing, and it's very prescient, and it speaks to me a lot on the end. There's this concept of like, what did they whisper to you at the end? I said we'd kill them all. They said we'll kill them all, and that it's this escalation. Everything is always escalated because nobody can ever take a step back. And I am a consensus builder. I tend to be somebody who believes that there's conflict resolution. There's always an answer. There's a solution to every problem. And so that movie speaks to me in the sense that there are some problems that no one will ever take a step back, and we will continue to escalate as time goes on.
Wow.
So not really inspirational, but more of warning.
So if you're having a dinner with 3 other guests, we'll give you 4 if you need it. Fictional, dead, alive, historical, who would it be? And then we'll stop pestering you. This is your final question.
No, I love it. These make me think. I would love, Dr. Blackwell was the very first female physician, and she actually applied under a man's name to get accepted. And then once she arrived, they figured out she's a woman. I would love to pick her brain on like how that was and what that was like to be the first female physician. So I think she would be at the table. I don't know. There's like so many like athletes that I feel like I would love to talk to, and like maybe Chris Evert. Like I think like, I don't know anything about tennis, and she feels like such an inspiration and such like, again, a trailblazer, although not the same as like, not the first woman ever, but still had to break a lot of barriers. So she kind of, I think of her as being somewhat inspirational. No, who'd my third one be?
I like those. Those are eclectic. I like the
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm all very like girl powered. I'm definitely like my Wellesley is showing. I am trying to think of another inspirational female. Like, I feel like I can't remember her name. The woman that lost, that was she's a politician, and she lost her legs. She was in Afghanistan and lost her legs. I can't think of what her name is. I'm blanking on her name. I can't think of what her name was.
Don't
like,
worry. I'm going to say a name right now, Tammy Duckworth, and then I'm going to go back and dub in the real name.
There we go. Perfect.
I know.
Perfect. See, editing is good.
I love it.
Yeah. But I feel like she like brought her kid to Congress. She is like, again, like super real, super like inspirational of what she's. Yeah. So she's very inspiring. I would like to eat with her.
Okay. Very cool.
So that would be my 3. Very diverse group.
Good stuff. Well, thanks so much. I mean, you gave us a lot of good things to think about. And like you said, you put it in English. And so, it makes sense.
I feel passionately about a lot of this. And I do feel like Ty and I used to stand on the side of lacrosse fields talking about the future of kids and sports in America. And so I think what you guys are doing is amazing. And I love what you're doing, and the depths to which you're getting in with your guests. I love it. So I was thrilled to be asked.
Well, you and Ty should start a podcast.
We'll have you back as a recurring guest. And we just have to figure out how to let Matt talk.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Thanks so much for having me. Cool. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.